Over the last couple of days, I've actually been spending more time playing Super Mario Galaxy 2 than Pokemon Legends ZA. Now, it's not because I don't like Legends ZA, it's quite the opposite, but Super Mario Galaxy 2 has kind of endured, I think, as the all-time goated 3D Mario game. I think there are Mario games I like more than this. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is the one that comes to mind, but I think when it comes to like the 3D series specifically, I think Galaxy 2 is by far the best. I think the game from start to finish is just top tier platforming. There's some lazy stars here and there and some bad level design, but for the most part, it's like 10 out of 10 platforming greatness all the way through. It is kind of shocking how much better this is than Super Mario Galaxy 1. And that's something I've been saying for a very, very, very long time, since the game came out, in fact. But it's very interesting to see where this game has ended up because this was a wildly ignored, downplayed Nintendo Wii game back in the day. You know, when this first came out, everyone was writing this off as a lazy expansion pack, that this would have been DLC on other consoles, that Nintendo was ripping you off, and yet, like, you know, I went out and bought this game and loved it far more than the original. And these days, seeing the same people pull the same stunt again with the re-release, like, oh, it's too overpriced, like seeing that lead into like massive success, not just for Super Mario Galaxy 2, but for the original and for the upcoming movie. Like what we're seeing is just the natural endpoint of coping and seething about Nintendo products is that people will actually play the games, become hardcore fans of them, and love them for decades. And that's kind of what we're seeing with Mario Galaxy 2 because this was a game that everybody agreed when it first came out was underwhelming compared to the real video games that year. Games like Red Dead Redemption and the like, Fallout New Vegas. Like Mario Galaxy 2 was completely shunted to the side and ignored because the Wii was on the way out and Nintendo couldn't compete with Rockstar and these HD games. Like Nintendo was very limited in what they could do with with their console. And yet, meanwhile, in a reality, they were delivering games that were far beyond what anyone else was doing at the time. You know, Donkey Kong Country Returns is a really good example of that, in which they produced a high quality, high budget 2D platformer that became ultra successful. Right? Donkey Kong Country Returns was fantastic. Like Mario Galaxy 2 was fantastic. You know, Skyward Sword, when it came out in 2011, was fantastic. And yet, these games were written off and ignored in order to hype up some bullshit that nobody remembers or cares about. You know, like that's kind of that's kind of my mindset, you know, playing through Mario Galaxy 2 again, and why I've been spending so much time like talking about this and why this is such a big deal for me, because this is one of my personal all-time favorite Mario games. It always has been, and yet because of these people, this game has never gotten the attention and love that it deserves. If people say they love Mario Galaxy, they mean the original Mario Galaxy. And they almost certainly mean that they don't care about any other Mario game on Wii. You know, games like New Super Mario Bros. And Mario Galaxy 2 have been derided for not being as creative or original as Mario Galaxy, when in my mind, both of those games are way better than it. You know, like the only reason people hyped up Galaxy the way they did was because it was pretty much impossible at that point to downplay 3D Mario. It's just that's just the reality of the situation, is that Mario was so innovative and so fun and so like had established itself in the culture so thoroughly that it was very, very difficult for anybody to sit there and cope and seethe about the brand at that stage. But it's very easy to forget that like just 5 years before with Sunshine, that game was hated and that game was derided, and like developers at Naughty Dog seriously thought that like Nintendo was on the way out. You know, like that was the mindset at the time, you know, until the Wii and the DS kind of came out and just stomped everything the PS2 did within a single generation. Like there was this very real consensus in the gaming industry that Nintendo was going to go third party, you know, and that mindset led to downplaying the Wii U before it was even announced. Like the reason why they were so adamantly hateful towards the Wii U was because of how bitter and miserable they were that the Wii and the DS were so successful. They knew that they could not allow the Wii U to be successful. So they did everything in their power to sabotage it before it came out. And doing that just led to the Switch coming out and getting a bunch of Wii U games ported to it, which led to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe becoming one of the most successful games ever made. So downplaying a Nintendo console doesn't work anymore. Downplaying Mario doesn't work anymore. Downplaying Zelda doesn't work anymore. And what's more is that we're seeing this expand to other Nintendo franchises. Donkey Kong is back now. Fire Emblem. Pikmin is bigger than it used to be. Like Kirby is like the biggest it's ever been. Splatoon is becoming big. Like another decade of this, and we're gonna see a lot more like must-have Nintendo Switch titles. Like the era of just sitting there trying to gaslight people into thinking that like the new Nintendo game is disappointing and doesn't live up to expectations is over. Like the whole like NES boomer method of just saying that like Mario 3 was peak, it's just given away to like younger fans. Like you can't keep hyping up Mario 3 to people who have never played it. That's kind of my mentality on it. Like you're seeing this now with Pokemon fans right now, where like, well, Gen 5 was peak. And like, kids who are playing the new ones are just like, oh, cool story, bro. I can't wait until they re-release it. And then they go back to playing the new ones. Like, like you can't weaponize a an older game in a beloved franchise against a newer one, because like you're still presenting yourself as a fan of the franchise. You're proving that the franchise is relevant, that it's still talked about, that people still care about it. And that like your attempts at like trying to subvert and destroy Nintendo by pretending to be a fan, they just completely implode. And I think that this is kind of like what we're seeing now with like the Nintendo fan base in general, is that we're seeing a lot of these decade old communities just kind of collapse because younger people are just kind of laughing at boomers who can't move on. Like people who sit there and still try and tell you that like, well, Mario 3 was the best game ever and I'll never play another. It's like nobody respects you, nobody takes you seriously. Like you don't even know what comes out. That's my that's my mindset, interacting with these people and speaking with them at length, is that like they don't know anything about modern games. They don't know anything about Pokemon or Splatoon or like any of this stuff. No, it's just bad because it's new. And like that kind of mindset really can't be tolerated in a culture that's constantly innovating with new stuff, new releases that are perfectly worthwhile to get excited for and talk about. Like I've talked a lot over the years about how I personally am swamped with games to play on Nintendo Switch 2. Like I cannot possibly keep up with all these games that are coming out. And yet, like, you have the gaming community at large, like sitting there trying to gaslight you that nothing is coming out at all, that there's nothing to play. And like just look around, like and Mario Galaxy 2, I think is a really good example of a game that got completely buried by this mindset, by this culture at the time, and yet has gone on to be like a beloved classic in its own right. Like this is not an isolated incident. We have seen this happen like time and time again over the past 30 years, and it really needs to be called out and addressed that good Nintendo games go under the radar all the time because certain individuals like obsessively hate and go after them. Like Mario Galaxy 2 is a great game that I hope gets legions of new fans on Nintendo Switch 2.